I'm Robert McBride, and this is Everyday People, a program in which we investigate the lives of people making a difference in our community. Good morning, this is Robert McBride with another episode of Everyday People, talking to people in our community that make a difference. Happy early spring day here, which is beautiful outside but still wintry. And on today's program, I'm going to be talking with Ray Boas, who many of you might already know. He's a Walpole resident, wears many, many hats, as we will touch base, from his historical side. He's a bookseller, from this, from that, and also the person that has been the editor and founding person of the Clarion, a newspaper in Walpole, which covers that in Walpole and also events in Bellows Falls. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me this morning.
I think we've talked on the street a little bit back and forth, and I think the last time I sort of studied you, it was in a play when you did the Christmas play up in Charlestown this year, right? Was it this year or last year? I kind of lose track of time.
Oh my goodness. I did You Can't Take It With You in Charlestown last year.
Okay.
Christmas Carol is something we did here in Walpole.
In Walpole.
For 7 years. Yes.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about the Clarion, the Walpole Clarion, because that probably will...
Well, my late wife and I got here in 2002, and shortly after that time, many people may remember the Walpole Gazette, which was owned by Jeremy Paulus, which ran for a number of years. And Jeremy got to know me, knew my background, my interest in writing, publishing books, et cetera, and it was encouraging me for a number of years to pick up where he left off with. And actually, Walpole's been a long time publishing, has a long publishing history going back to the late 1700s. Finally, in October in 2011, I decided it was time to do it. And the Walpole Clarion is a monthly community newspaper. I mail it to everyone in Walpole, North Walpole, and Drewsville. 20 to 24 pages each month, providing information on upcoming community events and past successes. And to do something like this, I have some help. I have an editor, a copy editor and a designer who does the work for me. But to make sure it's successful, I look at it as a community service, a public service, and my target is to break even, which I'm doing. So something like this, an endeavor, if you were trying to make money at it, you're not going to.
No, exactly. I mean, it's the same thing with my arts organization. It's a community endeavor. It enriches the community, but it's not about a business that you're going to flip or make money off.
No,
it's really connecting people in the community.
It's a labor of love, and you do it because it's something that has to be done.
Yeah. No, that's great. And when you do mail that out, what is that population that you actually mail to?
I mail just under 2,000 copies.
Okay.
The post office has a program it started at about the same time as I started, called Every Door Direct Mail.
Oh.
So it's only cost me 17 cents to get it to every post office address.
Wow.
Otherwise, it would be very difficult to do.
Right. And I think you said the Village Printers in Bellows Falls.
Yes, Craig has been absolutely wonderful. We have a great relationship with him, and send him the files. A couple days later, he emails me. I come over and pick it up and start dropping it off at the post offices.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned you and your wife had moved up here. Was it in 2002, did you say?
That's correct.
And you had moved from where? Are you a Northeasterner? Or?
Well, I'm originally from Connecticut. We married in '95 when we met down in New Jersey. Moved back to my home state of Connecticut. After I retired from the Navy, I had bookshops, several out-of-print bookshops. I was one of the first on the internet with books back in the early 1990s, and our internet business was so good, we were so burned out with having a shop open all the time, that just in an overnight stroke of luck, we sold everything in Connecticut, discovered Walpole, and moved to the area.
And was that sort of a total serendipitous finding? You know,
exactly.
I mean, that's how it was for me in Bellows Falls.
Exactly. We took a rare overnight for our anniversary. We were at the Grafton Inn. The next day we were in Chester at an antique center. Woman turned around and said, "You're Ray Boas, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." And I'd forgotten Lorraine. She and her husband Ken had a bookstore in Brattleboro that we used to buy books from. And she said that, they had retired. Their long-range plans had fallen through because of Ken's health. She looked us square in the eyes and said, "If you had a long-range plan, don't wait, do it now." Which hit us like a ton of bricks. We had great nonverbal communication. On the way home, we talked about what we should do. And to make a short story very, very short, in 2 weeks we found our place in Walpole and sold everything. And actually Ken and Lorraine was correct that if you have a long-range plan, don't wait. My wife did get sick, not because the illnesses got better, but I lost her 10 years ago in an accident. So there was a reason for a plan for us to change our direction, and ending up Walpole and the Bellows Falls community has made all the difference in my life.
Yeah,
so time
it is
to
an
give
amazing
back.
place. I love is the scale of Vermont and New Hampshire where we are, the ruralness, because I look at it as sort of a seamless community across the river.
I totally agree with you.
It's, as we get into the rural part, I know that down towards New Hampshire in the south, you have a lot more tie and density to Boston and people that commute daily. But up here, we're rural communities that share the Connecticut River history.
I describe New Hampshire to people who aren't familiar with it as really 4 different states. I mean, you've got that side on the other, which is nothing but metropolis Boston. You've got the White Mountains, you've got the Lake region. Then you've got our nice little southwestern corner where there's no reason to be here unless you come here.
Right.
We've got the advantage of 91 to get anywhere.
Right.
And I end up spending a lot of time in Vermont because there's so much here that I enjoy.
Yeah. No, and I love it. I mean, when I've gone other places, I come back and, we have a little current bus system. The train still goes up and down the river. You can get to New York or in Washington.
I've done that.
There's 3 airports to choose from: Manchester, Bradley, Boston, Albany.
You've got the best movie theater in the state of Vermont. I haven't been there since last night.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Now you mentioned, which is kind of interesting. Interesting. It's your life. I am interested in knowing you had this sort of Navy and then bookstore. Were they always kind of parallel things in your life?
Growing up in Connecticut on US Route 7, I used to ride my bicycle to antique shops, and I started collecting books. 22 years career in the Navy Supply Corps, the business end of the Navy, but I started selling books in catalogs 10 years before I retired. When I retired, it just sort of made sense, and I evolved into owning one bookstore and another bookstore. The internet came along. I was one of the first on the internet with books. I did beta testing for all the major out-of-print book sites. Even when Amazon went to what they call their marketplace with out-of-print books, I was invited to do beta testing for Amazon. It's just something I've totally enjoyed. I know a little bit about a lot from reading dust jackets and just handling so many books. So that's what I've been doing for the last 28 years full-time and 10 years before that part-time.
So there's so many different aspects of that, running a business. So, whether, and especially as it evolves in the internet, there's the customer service interaction. There's, the passion. Do you have a particular passion of certain books that you really like to either collect or
I prefer nonfiction.
Okay.
I'm not. I love learning from nonfiction. I've done a great deal. I started my catalog business with business and financial histories and biographies, and I was one of 2 people in the country that specialized in that genre. I moved into, at one point, because of collections that I bought, into antique reference and decorative arts books, which I find fascinating. But things become generational and change, and people don't collect those items anymore, so they don't need the books for their collections. I've purchased wonderful railroad collections, military collections, and the fun part is I'm the conservator, the custodian, from the home where they were loved to the next home where they're going to be loved and utilized.
Right. So I would assume your home has lots of bookshelves with books.
Well, I do have my own collection of books in the house. And when Kathy and I married and moved back to Connecticut, it was difficult finding a place for all my books. So when the move came to New Hampshire, we knew that let's not worry about finding a place that has room for the books. Let's find a place that we can then build for the books. So I built an addition as we moved for the books.
Right, right. And what is your continued current involvement with book sales and everything?
I ship books every single day at the post office, yes.
Wow.
Not the quantities that I used to because the nature of the business has changed. But my time is filled up with community activities in the Clarion, so it's fine.
And you just ship like all over the country, all over the world?
All over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So are there certain kinds of book events or things that you continue to go to because you get to see people or you like, or?
I pretty much backed off from that, Robert. You know, I enjoy the communications that I do have. In the past years, I mean, like I mentioned before, things are generational. And in past years, I got to build with a relationship with customers and help them build their collections. Now it's pretty much somebody needs a book and I ship them one book and I never hear from them again. But my focus is that I'm selling you a book today, but I want your experience to be such with me and the quality of the book that you get from me that if you need something 5 years from now and my name pops up, they'll remember me and say, oh, I'll get that book from Ray.
Right. And you have people that kind of drift into Walpole kind of regularly every few years to kind of just see you because they got a book here. Those kind of interesting, bizarre kind of serendipitous
not as much as in the past, but there's a few people that I'll bump into from time to time that I haven't seen in years, and that's always encouraging.
Yeah,
so.
that's amazing. That's amazing. I know you're also involved with the Historical Society.
Oh, I can't get enough of history.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about the Walpole Historical Society.
Well, I'm currently the treasurer.
Okay.
And you know, we have a president, Christy Windmill, who's done a great deal recently, along with our vice president, Andrea Goins, in conserving our collections, categorizing them and cataloging things in a more definitive way. Some of our exhibits have been fascinating. A couple of years ago, because Louisa May Alcott spent a number of
hear
years
about that. Yeah, I've heard a little bit about that, but I need some verifications.
Yes, Bronson's relative, because Bronson Alcott, as intelligent he was not very adept at taking care of his family. So a home was offered free for them to live in the early 1850s. So we came up with the idea of doing a exhibit on Louisa May Alcott. And I always had in the back of my mind I wanted to do a book or something. So I did do, in conjunction with our exhibit, a 40-page booklet.
Hold this up for the people.
On Walpole's Louisa May Alcott. And actually that ended up in 2016, I believe it was, one of our most successful and well-attended exhibits. In fact, it's still up, and we're going to keep it up again for another year.
Oh, good. So if someone wants to get a copy of this,
that booklet is available at the Historical Society for $5, or while we're closed, I have copies at my house for sale also.
So, and it's been years since I've been to the Historical Society, but so it's on Main Street, right?
Exactly.
And set back up a little bit.
It's the old Academy building.
Okay.
It was a private academy. You know, back in the early 19th century, most of the higher education and really like high schools were private academies. It was the building was built in 1831. By 1850, the private academy had pretty much was closing down. So the town bought it, and that became a school building for the town until, I forget exactly what year. I think it was 1950 when the Historical Society bought it at the auction. And so that's been our home since then.
And it's open seasonally, so
We're open on Saturdays.
Throughout the year?
No, once the weather turns.
Okay,
May
okay.
through October.
Okay, great.
So do come visit.
No, I will definitely do this. And like I said, as you have this wonderful Clarion newsletter that comes out, my arts organization maintains what we call the Ramp Google group. And it's an email group, and I hope you might subscribe to it, because then you can also post any events you want that are going on at the Walpole Historical Society or whatever. You'll get things that have to do with the arts in the broadest sense, arts, history, creative initiatives. And you can post things yourself so that we even hear more kind of about things. Now, does your Clarion exist as totally a paper form?
No,
or do you have a link kind of thing that you can click on?
No, actually, I have a website set up for the WalpoleClarion.com, and a couple days before each issue hits the post office, I put a PDF online.
Great.
And actually, I have the PDFs online going all the way back.
Fantastic.
If you're searching for something, my PDFs will pop up.
Fantastic. That's great. Yeah, well, please, even if you don't end up signing to the Ramp Google, just make sure you send me one every month.
No, that sounds great.
And then I'd be happy to post it.
Well, and people, if they wish, they can subscribe to the posts that I put out, advising them when our deadline comes out for articles. And also, I let people know when I've posted the PDF.
Okay.
So that they can read an advance copy.
Right. And the other great thing about it, you said you're just looking at a break-even point, and that the advertising does it. So it's also it's a great venue for people to explore with you if they have an event coming up. Give you some notice, take out a little ad.
Yes.
You'll
go through and you'll see a number of ads, which will be for, as you indicate, individual events. We've had some benefit events that an individual in town has had at the Opera House. So we've advertised those. And I've got some advertisers there who are just strictly supporting the paper.
Absolutely.
Because it's a community service. And just keeping their name out, nothing for sale, just keeping their name out.
No, that's great. That's great. So, since you're such a history buff and then you moved to Walpole, so I know a little bit about the development of Walpole's history in relation maybe to Bellows Falls history, but what is some of your perspective on that?
Well,
these two sides of the river.
I did do a number of years ago, as it was and still is, Walpole, New Hampshire, which is 128 full color pages of postcards and stereo views of the town, showing that basically nothing has changed since the 1870s. What I'm working on right now is another booklet. Who knows how large it'll be. I did this for a lecture for the 200th anniversary of the Horse Thieves, which could be another whole show.
Okay.
And they call the development of a village, because unlike most of the typical New England communities, we developed a little bit differently. Many of the villages in New England started around a common, and our common really came about 80 years after the town was developed.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting the way things developed. But of course, the railroad coming in up the Connecticut River, both on this side of the river and our side of the river, joining here in Bellows Falls, made this quite a tourist area as people were traveling to the White Mountains and so forth. Many people would overnight at the Island House out on the island. I wish it was still there.
I know,
and
me too.
Would discover the area and end up, getting summer homes as farms were being sold. So the tourism was pretty important in the area as it developed. As you know, of course, the first canal in the United States is right here in Bellows Falls. A lot of history here. I can't get enough of it.
Right. No, it's really kind of amazing. But did Walpole, though, I mean, it was founded in when,
1752.
1752. And I think that's kind of the same time they have Rockingham, somewhere around 1752, 70, something like that.
Yeah.
And I know most of the community of Rockingham originally was out around the meeting house.
Yes.
And then, of course, it moved to the downtown. There were fires, and then also as the river took prominence, and this tourism. It's so interesting to think about tourism. We think of that as, oh yeah, it's a new thing. But no, that was really the draw up here, the waters and the staying at the island house.
It pretty much took off pretty well with the railroads. The railroad came through Walpole heading up north in 1849. Not sure the exact dates that first got here in Bellows Falls. But there were actually people who would remain overnight at the island house. They could take buggy tours up to Table Rock or up to the summit of Fall Mountain. And also, just like in Saratoga Springs and other spa-type places, we had a spring in Walpole, Abenaki Springs. So I think it was 2 or 3 times a day, buggies would make the trip from the island house down into Walpole also to take the waters.
Right. No, it's really kind of wonderful and amazing to think about. But then as the communities continued to develop, Bellows Falls became very much sort of a, when the railroads came in, the canal really wasn't needed for the transportation part. It became a power source.
Yeah, well, of course, the paper industry came first.
Right.
We developed more along the agricultural lines, whereas with the falls here and the canal and the control of the water, you developed more of the industrial side. North Walpole came later on in history, really as housing for most of the people working in the paper mills and so forth.
Yeah, I always think about it as kind
much
of being,
more recent.
Right, and much more being a sort of actually part of Bellows Falls, actually, because of the workers there. And I think in those days, people just went to school. They went the whole state line thing.
Bridge.
You don't go to school here. It was sort of a
And ironically,
thing.
when I'd mail the Clarion, the North Walpole copies, I drop off at the Bellows Falls post office because that's where North Walpole's mail comes from.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yes.
I didn't know that at all. That's great. That's great. So, how have you seen Walpole change since you've lived here? Or has it?
Well, you see subtle changes.
Okay.
I believe, one of the difficult things I think we have in the area is employment for our young people. The community in Walpole is more like myself. It's aging. We don't have as many young people. I don't know what the demographics are really here in Bellows Falls, but I would think it's probably pretty similar.
Yeah, I think it's kind of
because
a
we
similar
have lost some businesses.
Yeah.
We've lost farms in our area. We're working hard to preserve our rural and agricultural property because that's the whole cultural aspect, the visual impact of our area.
Right.
If anything, I would like to see it stay just the way it is. And I think many people feel the same way.
I think we think also a lot, that is there, centuries ago when you could, as long as you had water power, you could open a business of some sort. You didn't have to be in an urban center. And I think, is this sort of analogous to the chance with the broadband and stuff that you can have a business somewhere that doesn't have to be in the middle of something. Look at you, you're shipping books all over the world.
Well, ironically, I was reading the Walpole Master Plan over the weekend, and one of our goals is to encourage home businesses, which of course, perfect with the internet.
Yep.
You can do anything.
Yeah.
From your living room table, the dining room table. Water power is interesting. People think of water power being big mills, but there were mills. You could put a little tiny mill on a little tiny stream. There were mills all over the community of Walpole.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's great. Well, I know I've gotten the high sign that we're going to kind of wrap up, so I just want to know quickly, is there any particular events that are coming up in the next 2 weeks you just want to shout out there to the audience? Or
Oh, my goodness.
Just don't go crazy,
That-
because they can go and see the Clarion or get a link to it.
I wasn't prepared for that question. Easter egg hunt
Okay.
on the lawn at the academy, sponsored by the Cub Scouts.
Okay, and that will be on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
okay,
it's
Easter egg hunt coming up.
Saturday
Okay.
before Easter.
Okay.
This Sunday, there's a pancake breakfast for Palm Sunday at the town hall.
Great.
It's been one of the longest running community events
Fantastic.
in town. It's just, it's a way of life, and I just want to see more of a community back and forth across the river at all
Well, I
times.
think this is it. I know you and I have bumped into each other and we've tried to talk more, so hopefully this will keep us going a little bit more. I'd love to have you back on the program with any updates.
Be happy to do
Please
so.
send me, when the Clarion comes up, if you have a little email group list, make sure I'm on it. We'll maybe get you to subscribe to the Ramp Google, knowing that you can just post anything that's happening, that's on your radar screen that's interesting. So thank you very
Wonderful.
much for coming and participating on the show.
Thanks for
sharing a little bit
that
about your
again.
life. So this has been another episode of Everyday People. I want to thank Fact TV, which is such an incredible resource in our community to cover events. I also want to thank Chroma Technology and First Light, formerly Sovereignnet, and the Vermont Arts Council and the National Endowment for the Arts for helping to support RAMP and the initiatives that it takes on in the community. Until next time, it's Robert McBride with our guest Ray Boas. See you on the square. RAMP would like to acknowledge organizations that help make this program possible through Fact TV, including the Vermont Arts Council, the National Endowment for the Arts, Chroma Technology, the Wyndham Foundation, and Stewart Property Management.